Hello, everyone. This is Jordyn Smith, the voice and the astrologer behind this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience, and also the webpage, Nonconformist Conscience. This week, I absolutely love the energy that is reflected because it is really reflecting self-improvement upon where and to whom and to what we commit ourselves to, our communication, and our own growth and internal knowledge. So there's quite a few things that I want to discuss for this week. I've also written a weekly forecast. If you're someone who likes to read more than you watch, or if you like to do both, I will put the link in the description for you. And I also want to say I'm going to be talking about quite a few asteroids throughout this week because they are really playing a supportive role, meaning that they are emphasizing and speaking more to the story of what the planets and the nodes and the luminaries are speaking to as they are conversing with each other. And I just feel like this week can be really powerful with deep insights. Before I jump into this forecast, as you all know, I do my birthday specials. Yes, it's still Gemini season until next month on the 20th. Come see me. Thank you so much to those who are Geminis who have already booked sessions with me. I'm really excited to meet you all. I love the interactions that we have, and there's bound to be great conversation whenever meeting you all. The other thing that I want to speak to is I'm someone who definitely wants to walk my own talk. And as we know, the transiting lunar south node is in Libra and it is ruled by Venus and Gemini. And so I want to communicate a couple of boundaries slash just updates. So the first one being, I'm no longer going to be doing payment plans for natal readings or any type of readings. And the reason being is, unfortunately, there has been several people who I have done readings for who wanted to do payment plans. They paid me the first installment and never paid me again, even after sending them invoices. And so it's just not feasible for me, especially during these times of inflation, and this is my career. I know that inflation is high and that things are expensive. I lowered my rates to the minimum that I can do to make a living wage, and it's actually still relatively very cheap in comparison to a lot of other people who do readings. The other thing that I have done is I do these specials, the birthday specials, and from time to time I'll do a different special, like I did the eclipse special. And this is because I understand how much it costs to live right now, and I want to make it affordable for you all, but I also need to make a living for myself. I'm helping to support 2 children, and this is just something that I need to communicate. I also wrote about it in the written forecast. And then the last thing that I want to say is I get astrologers or people who do astrology readings for others who have me look at the charts that they are doing readings for. And I just want to remind you all that I have a consulting fee or a tutoring fee. I've really been reflecting on this for quite some time, and I just don't feel like it's a fair energetic exchange for me to be taking the time to do that. And these are people who are getting compensated for that work, yet I am not. And this is really hard for me to talk about. I have a Libra moon, and so it's this is just me speaking my own personal truth. And, I have been reflecting on this for quite some time. And it actually speaks to a lot of the astrology going down this week. So I wanted to use that as an example as well, that for some people, speaking one's boundaries could be coming up this week. So without further ado, let me jump into your weekly forecast. So today on the 27th, we have Venus in a balsamic conjunction to the sun. Throughout this week, it is going to be hanging out in a balsamic conjunction to the sun. And these are both in the sign of Gemini, ruled by Mercury and Taurus. And Mercury and Taurus is part of a yod formation with the lunar south node in Libra and also Saturn in Pisces. So let's break this down. With Venus in a balsamic conjunction to the sun, this is where we get to take the knowledge that we have been learning for quite some time now and to really understand what is and isn't meant to stay. It's in the balsamic phase. Yes, there's a dissolving and culmination process, but it's also speaking to taking the wisdom that is timeless and universal in nature that we've been learning and utilizing it to birth a new process. And that new process is going to be seen next week when Venus passes over the sun and the sign of Gemini. But right now, the sun is really helping to illuminate what this is. And then with Mercury, the ruler of both, this is really applying that universal and timeless knowledge as a inner resource, as inner knowledge. It's not just something that we are taking from external, it's where we're utilizing it. And what this really is speaking to and reflecting, considering that Mercury is in Taurus and the ruler of all of the Gemini energy that's playing out right now, is Mercury in a yod with Saturn and Pisces and the lunar south node is, what have you been learning throughout the Mercury retrograde cycle? Whenever it was in the sign of Aries and conjunct the north node and conjunct Chiron, what have you started to understand and apply about yourself? And the need is not only to apply it to yourself, Mercury and Taurus, but also this comes from the self-reflection that is exhibited by Saturn in the sign of Pisces. There's this need to really get into our emotionality as a way to cultivate wisdom through self-reflection, to apply that knowledge to ourselves first and foremost, Mercury and the sign of Taurus. But the apex of the yod is the lunar south node and the sign of Libra that is also ruled by that Venus that's culminating into the sun. And so this is where once we understand our own inner dynamics, we then get to apply, it gets illuminated and it becomes wisdom and it helps cultivate discernment and it becomes an inner knowledge and an inner resource that we then get to apply to our relationships, Libra, as a way to help heal the past. So we're not doing the prior dynamics that we used to do in relationships. And this has really been facilitated throughout Mercury's whole retrograde cycle in the sign of Aries. A really great way that I like to utilize this energy is understanding that on the one hand, Gemini wants us to classify everything and label it and give it a name. And then we have Mercury and Taurus ruling that, which is really about grounding within and our inner listening and our senses and our feelings. And then Saturn in Pisces is about understanding our emotions and allowing ourselves to heal through allowing our emotions to wash over us. And so a really great way to utilize this energy that's going on throughout this week that can be very beneficial is to ground into the body, utilizing that Taurus energy that's still at play, and to understand that there could be something on a sensory level that's happening, and then to label that using Venus and Gemini and Mercury as a way to label that feeling, and then to not think about it, to just label it, whether that be grief or sadness or insecurity or jealousy or anything that comes up, because what that does is it gets you into your body and like your physical body, and it also gets you into your emotional body. Not to analyze it or to intellectualize your emotions, but to just allow it to wash over you as you ground into it, because it'll help you understand where those emotions are stored within your body. And whenever you can understand where that's stored within your body, you can do practices that help release that. And it helps to gain better awareness about ourselves. You know, this is really supported by Jupiter and Gemini, ruled by that Mercury and Taurus as well. There's an expansive process that happens when we tap into our emotional reality and allow ourselves to not intellectualize it, but to just label it and refrain from intellectualizing it, and then to allow it to wash over us. It gets us in touch with our inner dynamics. And then when we bring in Ceres, who is retrograde and the sign of Capricorn, ruled by that Saturn and Pisces, it facilitates in a process of emotional maturation and being able to inwardly emotionally validate yourself, because you're actually in touch with what's going on and you're not trying to intellectualize it. And Jupiter is super supportive because you allow yourself to sit with these emotions. Later on, in a very Jupiterian way, right brain intuitive, the awareness and the insight on an intuitive level will come of its own volition about what this is about and what's needing to heal, and thus perpetuating better self-reliance, better inner knowledge, the ability to listen to ourselves and to our body and to our emotions, and to connect feelings, senses with our emotions. And then this can be applied to cultivating better ways of communicating with others in relationships. And so this is really how Ceres, ruled by that Saturn and Pisces, in the sign, in that Yod formation with Mercury and the lunar south node being ruled by Venus, that is culminating into the sun, and Mercury ruling the sun, Jupiter, and Venus all at once. It's just a really great natural exercise that you can do if you have a hard time, because Saturn and Pisces has been wanting us to unlock our repressed and stored emotions that need to surface in order for healing to take place. So this same time, Pluto in Aquarius is going to be in a trine to the Gemini energy. It's still in this trine, helping us to clear away old trauma, old ways of relating to ourselves, and thus helping us to declutter and have an internal excavation process so that eventually new information can come to the forefront, can be seeded into us. So this is very beautiful energy. And then on the 29th, Mercury is going to hit the 21-degree mark in the sign of Taurus. This is where that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction happened last month on the 20th, 21st. Talking about Gemini, and I'm having throat issues. So let me take a drink really quick here. Mercury in Taurus at this 21-degree mark, keeping in mind is the ruler of this Venus that's culminating into the sun, is now at this place of where whatever it was that we have been understanding about ourselves on an authentic and unique level, the journey that we've been taking to cultivate and develop our inner relationship to self, to have a transformative process. Mercury here now is allowing us to really apply this knowledge and start to apply it in a brand new way, because it's hitting that 21-degree mark. This is also happening while Venus is in a first quarter trine to Cassandra. And Cassandra is in Aquarius and ruled by Uranus in the sign of Taurus, and Venus is ruled by that Mercury at that 21-degree mark that Uranus and Jupiter were just at a month ago. So there's a couple of things that I want to say about this. There can be a lot that comes up this week where we're realizing how we haven't spoke up when we needed to, or where we might have been afraid. And the awareness that can come is regarding around the experiences that cultivated the fear or the patterns of not doing that. Venus here in the sign of Gemini, ruled by Mercury, helps give us really deep wisdom and insight into what this is about. And this is also about having the conversations that need to be had. Thinking about how Mercury, Venus's ruler, is still in that yod formation I just talked about as this is happening. This is where, if you need to have a conversation with someone, to do it authentically, to do it honestly, because Gemini can be about this duplicitousness. And with Cassandra trining Venus, this can be where we have old wounds around where people gossiped about us, where the expression, I wrote a little bit about this. If we remember, I don't know about you guys, but I was born in the 80s and grew up in the 90s. And one of the expressions I would like say to my sisters was like, say it to my face. This is that energy of, maybe you need to have a conversation where you say it to someone's face, not in a mean way, okay? Not in like a little kid, immature way, but just that energy of where we respect it a lot more when someone speaks with us and to us in an authentic communication, rather than talking to other people about that, instead of to the actual person that they're needing to speak it to. And so there can be a lot of understanding that revolves around where we might have wounds around people doing this to us, and it cultivating inauthentic communication, and where it cultivated instances where someone else wasn't able to hear where we were coming from, or we couldn't hear where someone else was coming from, because it was being projected through the filter of these events that were wounding and traumatic. And all of this is going on this week as a way to bring deep insight and awareness into where we can improve upon these dynamics of how we communicate. That way, it creates harmonization and balance, thinking of Venus and Gemini ruling that Libra South Node. This is a really great time to understand that we can be courageous, and we can say, this is how I'm feeling, and this is how this emotionally affected me. Or like I did at the beginning of this, is I don't have time to do free stuff anymore. I've loved it, but Saturn and Pisces is telling me, if I keep pouring, I'm not going to have anything left for myself in my own cup. So it can be any type of dynamic like this, where we're recovering our voice and our inner knowledge, and how it helps to cultivate a more self-reliant and self-respectful, healthier self-esteem. Because at the end of the day, someone can take what we say and maybe it doesn't create a change. That's where we get to learn, like, hey, maybe this person shouldn't really, it's not our time to be friends right now or to have a relationship. Like, let's, come back to this a little bit after we've reflected. But at the end of the day, speaking your own personal truth and not talking about it to other people, but literally saying it to that person that you're needing to, really helps to generate more self-reliance and the ability to communicate in an intimate and authentic way. This also helps us develop our own listening skills. And with Jupiter and Gemini, while this is occurring, and Mercury and Taurus at this 21-degree mark, it helps us understand the relativity of truth. Like, sometimes there doesn't need to be an argument. It can just be, hey, I'm going to agree to disagree. I value and respect how you're feeling and what your emotions are, but that just wasn't how I was feeling or how I perceived that. And there's actually something really beautiful in that, because it allows us to understand that we're each unique and have our own unique experiences, and we take information in Gemini in our own way. And so it's the naturally occurring law of relativity. Instead of trying to convince and convert someone, it's about seeing the beauty in their own perception. Now, if there's disrespect, that's a different thing. If you're communicating boundaries and someone is going against that, that means that you're learning about discernment around whom you can have authentic communication with and whom you can't. And these are some of the lessons with that South Node in Libra forming a yod to Mercury and also Saturn this week. It's helping us have this discernment. So Kassandra trine in a first quarter trine to Venus really can help impart a lot of wisdom around why we felt we couldn't speak up in the past, where we should be speaking up now in the present, how we can be more authentic in this, and how we can improve by clearing out some of these prior ways of communicating and listening. This is where we're really trying to cultivate, am I able to listen to where another is coming from? And are they able to listen to where I'm coming from? If that's yes, and even if we're disagreeing and we're understanding the relativity of truth, there's still equity in that, because both are being able to hear where the other is coming from instead of trying to convince or convert. And so there can be this process of learning authentic and intimate communication this week. This can also be like, hey, I just am having these deep insights and I want to communicate this. I need a safe person to communicate this to. Me and my beautiful friend, she's one of my absolute best friends. Her name is Kita. We were having a conversation this morning revolving around how, and this is so on par for this energy right now, how there were things that we spoke up about when we were younger that neither one of us were listened to, and the effect that it had on us, and how we had to see the patterns that it cultivated and created and perpetuated into our own adulthood. And we need to remember that all of this energy this week is happening while Mars is going to be in conjunction to Chiron, and it's going to enter this new phase on the 30th, the very next day after this Cassandra Venus trine, which that gets me to this. This is energy that's going to be held within. Leading up until the 30th, we're going to be understanding these habituations and our patterns revolving around where we've been wounded or had old traumas, like what I was just speaking to about me and my friend having this authentic and intimate conversation just about our emotions and where we've been wounded. And so it's helping us understand what types of patterns did this lead to in our lives. And then on the 30th, Mars is going to cross over Chiron and help us to start cultivating new patterns around these dynamics through the awareness that we're coming into throughout this week. It helps us break free of the old patterns from our wounds, where we've projected that into the present, and how, as we have the courage to go inward and to learn, and then to have these vulnerable conversations, it helps create new patterns. So also on the 30th, Lilith in the sign of Sagittarius is going to be in a full phase opposition to its ruler Jupiter in the sign of Gemini. This is happening as Pluto's in a first quarter trine to Jupiter while it's opposing Lilith. So this is where, through this opposition from Lilith to Jupiter, we get to compare and contrast where we might be at a standstill, where maybe we didn't feel like we could be authentic or have authentic communication in the past, stemming from old wounds or trauma. And Pluto in that trine, igniting this opposition, helps us to really objectify these dynamics and to be able to liberate from the patterns so we can expand upon our own naturally occurring truths. That Lilith in the sign of Sag is wanting us and speaking and breathing air and a prayer into. This is like where we get to learn even more about ourselves as we're recovering who we are, the undistorted, the healthier version of ourselves. And Lilith is shamanistic and nurturing, but also is a fierce bitch. And I love her because she really will help to foster and fortify this whole dynamic of helping us to understand what is natural, where have we come to a standstill about revolving around our authenticity, our intuition. Where do we need to break free from these patterns? How do we liberate from this? It brings in objectification and courage to look at this and to intuit. And then through intuiting this and having insights, we can then have ideas that we're meant to act on, because as this is occurring, that's whenever Mars is in this new phase conjunction to Chiron. So new desires can emerge regarding the work that we're doing now to clear out some of this. That way, it helps us to expand upon our inner knowledge and to act on the things that feel very authentic for each one of us on an individual level. Then on the 31st, Mercury is going to conjunct Uranus in a new phase. And this is where the sudden burst of ideas can really come into play. If we're working on the decluttering process, that has been ongoing, and it's really been a pattern since last week and is strung out throughout the rest of this week. This Uranus Mercury conjunction really helps us to continue to declutter, but also to have very great ideas about what it is that we're supposed to get after, what newness we're supposed to be learning, what how we can apply the knowledge that we've been gaining and gleaning, and how to actualize it and to set it into motion, and to have start an integrative process of, since there's been this decluttering, now we get this new knowledge in. So it's been this process of declutter, empty in order to pour more in. This is also happening, that Mercury Uranus conjunction in a new phase, while Juno in the sign of Virgo is in a first quarter square to the sun. This is really important. Juno and Virgo is about who and what we commit ourselves to, and Virgo is about what dynamics need to be purged and which ones need to be improved upon. And this first quarter square to the sun speaks to there can be some type of idea, especially with Juno being ruled by that Mercury conjunct Uranus. And that Mercury and Uranus is ruled by Venus and Gemini. There can be some type of deep insight and idea and awareness around whom we're supposed to commit ourselves to, what type of work we're meant to commit ourselves to, what idea we're meant to commit ourselves to. And that first quarter square from Juno to the sun really illuminates this. It ignites it. The way that you can know and understand whether this is something that's going to help you to improve upon what you commit yourself to is giving yourself a gut check. If you feel this in your sacral chakra, in your belly, and there's excitement, this is something that you are meant to be acting upon. And then the fear can happen with the first quarter square. It's the fear of action. And so there's a need to act on it if you get that initial excitement. And then the very next day, Uranus and Mars are in a semi-sextile. It is I believe it's a last quarter. Let me look at this. I want to make sure before I say anything. Yes, it's a last quarter semi-sextile. This is where we are liberating from these old patterns that I've been talking about, and then applying the knowledge that we have gleaned throughout the whole Mercury retrograde season, the eclipse season, and to act on it and to have a full integration of it. And that inner knowledge sparks these creative ideas that help perpetuate new desires, new patterns, Mars. And with Juno now in a last quarter square to Venus, Uranus's ruler, this is where we could be seeing old patterns pop up that were meant to have a lot of self-determination to say, no, I'm not going to act in the ways that I did. I'm not going to commit myself in that way. I'm not going to not have discernment. I'm going to make a choice, because that Venus and Gemini is dual. It's about these two choices. It's either we're going to move on from the past and we're going to be discerning in what we commit ourselves to as a way to self-improve, or we're going to do what we've always done. But there can be this, I don't know what to do. There can be a belief around this where it's challenging us, like what is the correct action of discernment? And that's where you have to listen to yourself and to self-reflect on what all you've been learning as this comes up and surfaces. And then lastly, for this week, Pallas Athene is retrograde in the sign of Scorpio. If you have noticed, I've talked a lot about Mercury this week, and I've talked a lot about Uranus this week. Pallas Athene is the octave transformer. It takes that knowledge and that we've been garnering, Mercury, and the transformative experiences in our objectification and our ideas, and it merges them together. It has an infusion. It elevates these two planetary pairs. It transforms them. And Pallas Athene is in Scorpio, so it is very much about metamorphosing our old limitations around our thinking. And it's about giving us very deep insight into our own inner psychology and our own emotional dynamics. And that's further demonstrated by Pallas being in the sign of Scorpio. It is yin, watery energy. It's energy that is internal. It's facilitating an internal process. And then it's in conjunct Mars and the sign of Aries. And this really, it's in a gibbous in conjunct. This speaks to all of this knowledge, these ideas, these forms of awareness about our inner psychology, our inner emotionality, are now helping us to self-improve and to discern what course of action, Mars, should I take in order to self-improve. So everything we've been working on this week and last week and coming to understand, Pallas Athene really infuses deep inner psychological awareness and emotional awareness. And it helps us to really, if we're utilizing this energy throughout the week, it helps us to discern what choice, what action, what course of action do we take now? What desire do I act upon now? And it's about what feels authentic, and it's what you feel in your gut you should do. And it's the way to continue this transformative process through self-improvement. And I love this energy. And we just need to remember that it's an internal process that comes first, Scorpio, that then ignites an external process. This Pallas Athene is ruled by Pluto in Aquarius. I mean, this is sudden, deep insight that helps us to liberate from past patterns in order to self-improve by cultivating new patterns. So as we nurture and process nurture this internal process within in a very scorpionic level, this has the ability to give us even further insight to help us to understand what action now do we need to take since we've come to an internal understanding. And then that action helps us to liberate further and transform. It's really, this week speaks a lot to, especially with Pluto and Aquarius, trining all the Gemini energy, ruled by Uranus and Taurus. If you think about it, throughout all of the Taurus energy that we just had, and we still have some residual, there was a lot that we were learning on an internal level and a grounding level. And now it is meant to be applied to have a lifestyle change. And that is Uranus and Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. Not Uranus and Aquarius, Uranus and Taurus, but being the ruler of Pluto and Aquarius. There's a lifestyle change underway for each one of us. And it's about honoring our authenticity and blazing our own path. And as we do that, new desires emanate from within that are authentic to our nature. And Pallas Athene and Scorpio is really helping facilitate this, whereas Ceres is helping us have an emotional maturation process through self-reflection and healing. And then Juno is helping us to discern around who and what to commit to. Lilith is in the mix, speaking to, like, be your authentic, undistorted, most natural self. I'm going to help facilitate this process. So it is just really, Kassandra is helping us recover our voice right now. It's just a really powerful week, and I wanted to talk about this. I think it's a great week to sit outside in nature. There's the Sag energy, the Gemini energy. There's also Virgo energy going down. Taurus is still there. Put your feet in the ground, in the dirt, do some gardening. Journaling would be amazing. Sitting outside in the fire, by the fire, swimming, anything about getting out in nature will help to have these bursts of insights that are wanting to happen. Free writing, I think I said meditation, anything. This is to get this energy flowing, and it's about merging the left brain with the right brain, the intuitive with the linear. This can be why meditating and intuitive insights that are then put on paper can actually help in our own healing and then also manifestation process right now. It helps us get in touch with our emotions, which help us to self-validate. There's so much wisdom and insight around our inner dynamics that can come up this week. There's a decluttering process still underway. There is a need to explore what this is and to be courageous in it. And new ideas will surface, and these ideas are sparked from our desires that are being emanated from within. This is also really strongly indicated with Pallas Athene being ruled by Pluto, that and Pallas being in conjunct Mars. Pluto being our subconscious desires in our soul, and Mars being the conscious desires. As we do this work, we get to liberate from old distortions and subconscious desires that are no longer resonating. And we get to have some of our subconscious desires that we're meant to be acting upon now because we're ready to, because we've been doing the work, that can be seeded into our consciousness in a way to help facilitate and self-improvement. So this is your week, and I hope to see more of you all soon. And I love this energy. And I think that's all. I'm sure I will make another video or something this week. I like doing a couple of videos a week for you guys, for those who like to watch them, to have like little breakdowns. So again, there's the written forecast. I will put it in the description, and I hope to see more of you soon.